Ijarah sukuk is an idea that is really a very innovative idea. You may understand that the market had only two kinds of instruments, financial instruments. One kind is a share in a company, and another kind is a debt on a company. The debt on a company takes different forms. One form is a bond, company bond. When this debt is on the treasury, then it is treasury bond. When the debt is on the government, then it is called government bond. When the debt, also another kind of debt on a company, but it's also debt, is called commercial paper that may be in the market. All these debts are based on interest, and they earn interest, and of course the interest is haram. The share, many companies may be halal to invest in, and also many companies, depending on the market, may be haram to invest in. But for a long time, only these two species, these two kinds of instruments existed in the market until the mid-1990s, where the idea of sukuk came, and specifically sukuk ijarah or ijarah sukuk. The sukuk ijarah or the ijarah sukuk are sukuk based on the concept of ijarah contract. Let's make an explanation here. The ijarah, sukuk al-ijarah or ijarah sukuk, or leasing sukuk you may call them, are as follows. Suppose a person owns a building, and the building is $10 million. And this $10 million building, of course, is represented by a document which is the ownership document, a kind of formal document issued by the government or issued by the municipality or certain authority, or by the like ownership that represents the ownership of that building. And the building is rented, and the rent, say, is $1 million every month, 10%. And let's say that person wants cash and decided to sell that building. To sell that building means to give that, and of course sign it on, endorse it to the other person, to give that document that represents the ownership to the new owner, and the new owner, with the registration of that ownership in the appropriate department of municipality or the government, will become the new owner, will pay, say, 1 million to the, or 10 million to the old owner, and then the new owner will start receiving the rent. Suppose the rent is payable every month, and every month you pay 1/12 of that million, approximately 800,000. Okay, so this document that represents the building, it's a document, in fact, when you transfer it from one person to another, you are transferring the ownership of the building. You are not transferring a piece of paper. You are transferring the ownership of the building. This is a suk. And this is an ijarah suk that represents a leased building, a building or asset. Could be, instead of a building, an airplane, or could be an airport that you own. So suppose that that owner owns the airport, or could be a bridge. All these can be represented, the ownership of them can be represented by documents. And now let's take it one step further. Instead of one document, let's divide the ownership of this building into 1,000,000 documents. Each document, we'll call it a suk, plural sukuk, and each suk will represent $10 because the building is 10 million, but not $10, it is $10 value of the asset. So it represents 1/1,000,000 of the asset whose value is $10. Now this $10 asset produces to you $1 every year as rent. The rent is halal, the ownership of a building is halal, the building is used for halal objective, the company that is rented to uses it for halal things, so halal is everything permissible. Of course, it's not permissible to rent it to a liquor company and then you earn from the liquor or from the liquor sale or production or whatnot. So that's not permissible. But if it is a bridge rented to the government or to the municipality of a city, then this bridge owned by the sukuk holders, and suppose it is 100 million, and we issued 1,000,000 sukuk, and these 1,000,000 sukuk that are issued, each one of them represents the ownership of 1/1,000,000 of the bridge, whose value was, when we established it, is $100 for each suk, and this suk gives you 10% because it is committed for rental to the government for say 10 years or 20 years, and then the government or the municipality will pay you 10% every year. Now let's take it one step further. The municipality wants to become owner of this bridge, doesn't want to keep it in the ownership of the sukuk holders, want to buy it from the sukuk. Can we make an agreement with the sukuk holders that every year we buy part of it? And for simplicity, let's say that the municipality every year, along with payment of the rent of $10 to each sukuk holder, to each suk holder, will buy also another amount to buy part of the bridge. Now, if it buys part of the bridge, next year it will not pay rent for it. So the rent will decline, and continuously over the 10 year, for instance, it will own the whole bridge, and the sukuk will be liquidated. So the ijarah sukuk then can be liquidated. Meanwhile, because they represent ownership that has a fixed return, prefixed return, and prefixed return is permissible in Sharia, in rent and in sale. Here we are talking about rent, so it is permissible in Sharia. Here we have a new species in the market. Instead of having only shares that are risky and only bonds and debts that give you fixed income but they are haram, we have something that gives you fixed income but it is halal, based on the ownership of leased asset or rented assets or assets committed to ijarah contract. So the sukuk of ijarah or ijarah sukuk are sukuk of assets that are of the ownership of assets that are committed to an ijarah contract, and normally with the condition of liquidation, that is with the condition that the issuer of the sukuk and the builder of that asset wanted to own it in the final analysis, and at the final outcome. So within the period of the sukuk, we'll buy piece by piece of these assets and become owner, and there will be no more rent, and there will be no more ownership by the sukuk holder, because they got their rent during that period, their income, and they got also their money back, their investment back, which is the price of the asset. Now we have a third species in the market, the sukuk, ijarah sukuk, and this sukuk, Islamic sukuk, became so common and so increasing in everywhere in the world that almost many countries have issued them, including UK and Russia and Singapore and Kenya and many non-Muslim majority countries. In addition to many Muslim majority countries, they issued sovereign sukuk, sovereign ijarah sukuk by government, but there are also many ijarah sukuk by companies, like for instance airlines that want to buy new, obtain a new 10 airplanes, and they want to pay for them over a period of 10 years, for instance, so they can obtain them through sukuk, issue sukuk to the market, buy with the proceed of the sukuk these airplanes from the producers of airplane, from Lockheed or whatever airplane companies in the world, and you pay for them to the sukuk holders who own these airplanes during that period, and of course their ownership declines after they receive payment for buying part of them by the airline company. Their ownership declines, and the ownership of the airline company declines until the end of the period of the sukuk, where all sukuk will be liquidated, and owners of the sukuk will have no more rent because they received their investment back, in addition to receiving their income during that period. So there are many company sukuk also, or corporate sukuk, in addition to sovereign sukuk in the market, and the sukuk market is increasing all over the world. So we have a third species in the market that is halal and that is much less risky to invest in than shares, and that makes it easier, especially for Islamic banks, to use in their what is called the liquidity management in the bank. When they have excess liquidity, they buy sukuk. When they need fund, they sell their sukuk. Walhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen.